Greetings and salutations, everybody. It's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor. Hope you guys are having a fantastic, what is today? Friday already. It's a little after 12. Again, I apologize. I'm a little late. I like to be on time when I can, but sometimes important things like this come first. Third black coffee today, and it's just 12. Welcome. If you haven't been on this before, this is my every Friday Facebook live stream training session, otherwise known as my No BS Final Expense Training Program. I want to thank you so much for attending, and if you are a casual and usual suspect, and this is your multiple time seeing this, thanks again for joining. I hope that you enjoy this training that I'm about to put on, because it's fairly detailed. And it is entitled, what is the title? Oh boy, it's one of those weeks. The top 8 crucial things to consider when looking or choosing for a final expense carrier. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. I just want to pop off a few things here just before I get down to business. So first of all, I recently launched a new product via a training program called my Final Expense Appointment Setting Mastery Program. If you have any interest in it at all, I'm going to go ahead and link that to the bottom of this video once I'm done. Basically, it's a program on teach you how to set appointments over the phone in the final expense business. So if that's something you're struggling with or would like to get better at and want to see a viable method on how to do it, it's great training. And even if you don't buy the product, there's tons of free training on the webinars that I host, so they're very informative, very good to listen and watch. If anything at all, I'll include that at the bottom. Also, if anybody's interested in finding leads and looking for a particular source, we'll recommend my avatar leads. Right now, orders are a little low on my side, so that means we can turn around orders a lot faster than normal. It's taken about a week or so before we're turning around leads. So if you have any kind of orders for final expense leads you'd like to put in, avatars are a great time to do it right now, as the turnaround time is way better than what is normal. So feel free to go to my website, feagentmentor.com, again, feagentmentor.com, and click the Buy Now or Buy Final Expense Avatar link at the top of the navigation bar. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into today's training. I even made a PowerPoint for you guys to just show you how important this really is. So let me pull that bad boy up here. You got to give me 1 second. Alrighty. Okay, boom. There it is. Awesome. Perfect. Look at that. How pretty. So what you're looking at is the final expense training. You know who I am. Already did that. And topics on today's training includes the top 8 crucial factors to consider when researching final expense carrier options. So let's get to those 8 factors. And then we're going to go into a very detailed discussion about them. So first of all, let me cover what this training is not about. It's important to differentiate between what you may expect and what I'm going to talk about. First of all, I'm not going to talk about any specific carrier. It's important to understand that. I'm not making any sort of carrier recommendations today. That's something that I sit down with my agents to recommend based on where they're at, what their goals are. What I'm going to talk about today are really just generalized points that are unspecific to any carrier or company. These are things that you all as agents need to be concerned with, no matter your background, no matter your level of experience, and things you need to always consider whenever you look on adding a new carrier to your final expense repertoire. Number 2, this is not specifically targeting any agency or organization either, although sometimes there are undercurrents that go back and tie into the agency or the organization. Specifically today is more about the nuts and bolts details of what needs to be considered when you look at adding a final expense carrier. This keyword is carrier. Not so much concerned about critiquing an agency or an organization in this video, more or less about the factors that are related to the actual carrier that you're writing in the field. And again, the goal is to provide you with a roadmap. Really, that's the key of the most important considerations before selecting a carrier to actually work with. So let's get started here. So I said 9, I actually condensed it to 8, so forgive me. So let's talk about the 8 that we'll be discussing. First is pricing, how the pricing is for each particular carrier, very important to consider. Second, underwriting. Of course, underwriting matters bigly, as our president-elect says. Got to make sure you got a good, flexible underwriting and know how it's clear and what it represents and what it will take. Thirdly, agent ease of use, extremely important. It's a pain in the butt to use companies that are pains in the butts. So we want to make sure that the actual carrier is making our lives as agents, the one who goes out and finds the deals, as easy and simple as possible. Commission, very important. We're going to get to some not necessarily first year commission and renewals and all that, but factors that can influence what commission you make that many agents really skip over. Very important on its own, and we're going to have an extended discussion about that. We're going to talk about vesting. Again, separate from an agency. Sometimes these carriers will vest you until you hit a certain amount. We'll talk about that shortly. Carrier contractual considerations. That's actually tied back into the commission section. Point of sale or not, and billing flexibility, and captivity or not. Cool. All right. So first, let's talk about pricing. Pricing, well, of course, as you may or may not know, is very important. Competitively priced is critical. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this off of the screen here and bring me back up and kind of tell you why this is the case. I believe in the final expense business, you don't need to be the low price leader every single time you're in the field. What people are generally looking for are two things. Number one, they want to make sure they get a good value for their investment into the product that they're buying. And then number two, they want to make sure they're getting, not ripped off, which kind of goes hand in hand, same way of saying the same thing. So when it comes to buying a burial insurance or selling burial insurance, you don't necessarily have to be the low price leader every single time. It doesn't hurt at all if all you sell is a low price carrier. Many times, though, as we'll get into in discussion here in a second, there's an inverse relationship between pricing and underwriting. The tougher the underwriting, the better the pricing. The lower the pricing, the tougher the underwriting. And then the vice versa is true. Higher the pricing, the easier the underwriting. It's kind of the little balance you're trying to figure out here as an agent. And you want to find something where you're competitively priced. You're not going to get easily replaced, but the underwriting is as clear as possible and as easy as possible to work with to make it a continual choice to pick amongst other carriers. Hope that makes sense. So I wanted to bring that up and discuss that because that's critical. Continuing on here. The lowest price is good, but not an absolute requirement. Again, the act of replacing an existing, or I should say, if an agent comes in behind you, the odds are generally low if you at first sold a plan that was generally competitive. Now, if you come in with one of these captive carriers, they're $20 or $30 over the same thing that he could sell. Look, you're asking for trouble, and that's really where persistency and chargeback problems become a real concern. You don't want to sell a plan that's way expensive and not be able to defend against the next guy in the door. And I can tell you, I've been doing this for 5.5 years. This business is more competitive now than it ever has been. There's agents all over the place in final expense now that have left health insurance, Medicare, mortgage protection. For the same reasons you're into this, it's a good, attractive business model. And if they can make a sale and kick you out, they will. So it's important to be competitively priced to prevent that as much as possible. And just to give you a little definition, competitively priced for me is if you think about the lowest price carrier, it's at least $10 or less in premium for the equivalent face amount. Nobody really flips for $5, except the super cheap people who are bad prospects, or bad clients, I should say. But people who, when you get 15 to 20, that's when you got to be concerned, because that goes a long way for someone on a fixed price, fixed income. Again, inverse relationship between pricing and underwriting, which we'll get into in our second section, which is underwriting. So the thing with underwriting is this: a clear underwriting with competitive pricing is better than unclear underwriting with the lowest pricing. And let me explain to you how I mean. With underwriting, the critical factor is that you need to be black and white. as opposed to gray. When you don't have specificity and assurance that what you're submitting to the company will actually be approved, this is what causes a lot of the heartache final expense agent experience. For example, they get rate ups, they got to go back and get amendments and that kind of thing, which eats into your productive time to go find new business and write more deals. And I'll tell you from personal experience, I'm not going to name the company out there. There's a very big final expense company out there that's been in the game a long time. About a year or two ago, they changed their application. It looked great on paper. I was personally really excited about it, and I wanted to write them a lot. But what happened was I found out they've got an internal decision-making algorithm or equation or something like that that they ultimately use to figure out if what you sent them is actually going to get approved. And what does that mean for us? It means anything we send in, even if it looks good on paper, even if the prescription guide and the medical information stuff matches with what's on the application, there's still more information at the carrier level that we don't have access to and nor have any privilege whatsoever that they get to use to determine if it's insurable or not. Now, I'll ask you, do you want to use a company like that as your bread and butter carrier? I remember, and I'm a good field underwriter. I went out in the field, wrote this company in the course of probably 3 or 4 months, maybe a dozen applications. Not a big company at the time with me. Half of them got rated up or declined. And I was stumped because it just didn't make any sense. And sure, people lie, but not to that percentage where half of them are junk. And so I determined at that point to push myself away from using them because it was causing me more problems than it was actually doing any kind of good. So continuing on here, let's keep going. So we covered that. Now, one thing you want to consider when it comes to underwriting is how the prescriptions are looked at. And there's really two different guidelines, and sometimes you'll find both are blended together. There's a knockout approach to knocking out prescriptions and a first fill guideline. So let me explain the difference. Knockout approach is just like it sounds. If this medication is used, they won't use it, or they won't accept it, or it'll be accepted as specific product type, level graded or modified. However, there's also another kind called first fill guidelines. What that means is, let's say you take somebody who has Plavix that keeps the arteries clean to prevent another stroke or heart attack or circulatory event, cardiac event. If they take Plavix with many companies that do first fill, as long as it's been 2 or 3 years since they've taken it, without any adverse increases in the prescription size, they will treat that as ongoing maintenance medication. Therefore, they'll take it for their preferred underwriting. It's very important you take a look at the prescription guide before you look at any company, because you want to make sure you understand the knockouts and first fill guidelines and the more specificity. You want to pay attention to flexibility with heart treatment meds. To me, this is one thing when it relates to underwriting you should be aware of. It's this. As you guys know who have produced in the field, there is just a lot of medications on the heart treatment side that can be used not just for strokes, preventative stroke medications, circulatory issues, heart attacks, that kind of thing. But there's also a lot of other medications, or those same medications, that those can be treated for just blood pressure. And so some of these carriers will take those meds that can be used for either or and just completely blacklist them. And what happens is when you get out in the field, you'll see a lot of this cross usage of medications. It's just a reality that we have to deal with. And if you use a carrier that's so heavy on the knockout side that they have no flexibility, like with the first fill guideline, which allows for some exceptions to be made, assuming that the period of time has passed, if you don't have carriers like that, it causes potentially a lot of problems. So make sure you look that over. For me, what I'm looking at as an agent, and for a guy that works with carriers to recruit agents, I'm looking at carvedilol, Coreg. Those are medications that treat congestive heart failure, but even just blood pressure. My dad uses it, and he's never had a heart problem. Then we also have warfarin, Coumadin, blood thinning medications used for basically just strokes or thinning the blood, but some companies are okay with them if they've taken them for a period of time. Also furosemide and Lasix, Plavix. Furosemide and Lasix are diuretics, They pull water off of the body, especially used when there's congestive heart failure, but you can pull water off the body and reduce blood pressure as well. So there's dual usage. And you just got to be careful and wary and make sure you review that, because many times if there's not that much flexibility, then it's not worth using, is really what it comes down to. So cool. Let's keep going here. Since we've got the underwriting portion filled out, let's move on to the next one. And that is ease of use for the agent. Cool. So ease of use, like I said earlier, bigly critical. Very critical to make sure, especially when you start in the business of selling final expense, to make sure your carriers are actually easy to learn, easy to understand, and easy to get business issued. The critical factor when you start in the final expense business is you go to work to get paid. All right? We want to help people, but we need to get paid in order to help people too. What you don't want to do is get with a carrier that ain't going to be easy and therefore ain't going to pay you. So it's critical to pick the ones that make your life easier, because it's hard as it is hustling burial insurance out there. So questions I ask is, for example, do they have experience, like real experience in the final expense market? A lot of these carriers look at final expense kind of with their nose down. The final expense is a market. There's the potential for profit in it, but they don't understand it. Most of the carrier types are from a traditional life insurance background, so they don't get the final expense business a lot. The companies that have been in the business of final expense for a long time, their product has pretty much stayed the same, pricing hasn't stayed. They've got a decent understanding of how final expense works, and but it's critical to make sure that they understand, and you'll know if they do, because they've got Social Security draft dates, deposit dates. They've got they accept Direct Express. They're smaller in nature. A lot of the smaller companies are the best ones to deal with in the final expense arena. Is it easy to contact support, agent support, and underwriting? Very critical. A lot of big companies make it really hard for you to actually deal with an underwriting situation. You know, it's like you got to jump through hoops and stay on call waiting for 20 minutes. It shouldn't be that hard. You should be able to pick up the phone. You're the guy driving revenue, and then talk to an underwriter, and they'll want to help you, the good ones at least, figure out if this client is good or not to be sent in. So it's important that you have that kind of support. Again, that's what I do in my mentorship program when it comes to sales training and underwriting knowledge, but it's important as well at the carrier level. Lastly, is the application short? And this is really important to understand, because in the final expense arena, the technical term for what we do is called simplified issue whole life insurance. Keyword simplified. You shouldn't have to sit down with a prospect and have a 20 or 30 page application like you would with any other traditional life insurance plan. Why? Because simplified issue by definition is only looking at the MIB, Medical Information Bureau, and a collection of prescription history to determine an underwriting outcome. Ideally, it should be done on the spot, and the guidelines should be set in stone. It's not always like that, but the point is that your application, of which you submit to be approved, if you don't do a point-of-sale interview, we'll get to that a little bit later, it should be short. We're talking 4, 5, 6 pages. You don't want to start, especially as a new agent, with a company that has an application that's 12 to 15 pages in length, unless it's fills a particular role. You don't want to necessarily use it as your go-to unless you've come from a traditional background or a paperwork-driven background where you're detail-oriented and have that experience. Again, it may be a good company, but a lot of these companies, with the more paperwork they have, the more amendments they get, the more wasted time you go through to never really get half of the policies issued. That's the reality of final expense. If you're there in the home, you got to make the sale now. You can't leave 99% closed. If you don't have it all done, you got about a coin toss chance, if you're lucky, to get the deal sold. So go with a shorter application to really make your life a lot easier. All right, so keeping going here. We covered the bigly critical stuff, ease of use for agents. Now we're going to talk about commission-related concerns. So let's kind of clarify what I mean by commission-based. So the devil's in the details when it comes to commission-related concerns. And what this pertains to is what you find inside of your final expense contract. It's not so much what your agency or your management issues you as your first year commission. I can have a whole nother discussion about what's good, what's bad, what you should look for, what you should be concerned with. That's a whole nother conversation. What this is about is what the carriers stipulate for different factors contractually. This is something I have found that's, to me, it's a very important thing, because the devil's always in the details of any contract that you read. And as an agent, you need to maximize your income in the field. You certainly don't want to be in a situation where you're missing deals or leaving money on the table. So you need to know all the facts as far as what pays out and what percentage under what circumstances for the carriers that you're looking at. So let's take a look at a few things that I think are super important to be concerned with. Your first thing is chargeback guidelines. And this is really interesting. The traditional, typical way to deal with chargebacks is to, you don't get what you were advanced that lapses. So, for example, you write a deal. It advances $1,000 at 75%. Well, let's see if I can get the math right. Let's see. It advances $900. It's a $1,200. You're 100% commission. Advances $900. It's a $1,200 policy. Hope you're with me. It lasts 3 months before the deadbeat prospect decides against it. You've been paid. She paid 3 payments, but there's other 6 payments you've been advanced towards that you haven't. That the company has been paid. Under most circumstances, those 6 months get refunded back to the company. That, in essence, is a loan. That there's no collateral backing. So they demand that through the process of putting on new business or as earned income that comes on the back end. But the key thing is it's not yours. Okay? That's normal. That's fine. That's how it should be. However, a lot of companies, if you read their commission graph statements, their comp grids, they will give you the fine print in different circumstances where that's not true. I've just gotten done looking at several different carriers, and some of them, for example, if a particular product lapses in the first year, they'll charge back for the whole thing. So that means if guy paid into it 11 months, didn't get to the 12th payment, but he lapses for whatever reason, you have to owe back the entirety of all that. Now think about that. You could have wrote them with another company that doesn't do that, and you could have kept, in the case we just mentioned, $1,100. Whereas now you owe back an $1,100 chargeback. And little things like that begin to add up. I call it, cost creep. It's in the contract, it creeps up on you, and it can make a tremendous difference in really your financial stability with that particular carrier. Also, some companies, more prevalent with guaranteed issue carriers, they'll charge back for anything that dies in the first 2 years. Most companies, you get to the first year point, if they die after that and it's rescinded, meaning they find out they should have never issued it, then they'll charge you back for everything. But if they die and it was a legitimate death and the death claim is cleared and the claim is paid, in many cases, if it's beyond a year, you don't have a chargeback. Okay? So some companies, especially GI companies, guaranteed issue companies, by the way, if you don't get to that point of the 2-year mark, you have to be paid back everything if they die at any point in those 2 years. There's even a few, one in particular that just came out, I refuse to pick up, that will lapse you or charge back in the case of death or lapse in the first year, and then partial chargeback in the second year. It's just a waste of money and a waste of time. You don't want to fool around with that stuff that puts you in a bind, because you're going to have a huge chargeback when you least need it and expect it, and you're going to flip out. So you got to be careful about chargeback provisions. Again, ideally, pick companies that charge you back based off of what was not earned. If you earn 6 months for the lapse, you keep those 6 months. That's what's critical. And even some companies say if they lapse within the first 6 months, then you owe the whole thing back. All right, keeping going here. Whoa. All right. Time-based, product-based. I think we talked about that. Commission reductions. So here's some more devilish details. Age. Many carriers will reduce comp based on age. Probably about half of them do this. And I get why. there's a level of uncertainty at the upper echelon of humanity and human life that would dictate some level of uncertainty. And so to bolster against that, they don't pay us as much. But hey, they're a person, they're insured. If they ask all the questions and they answer them all right, hey, bottom line, they're just as good as any other, the way I look at it. So you want to make sure, especially as you get over 80 years old, find carriers out there that will pay you your full commission. Many of them will dock you by 30 points. I've seen 40 points on some carrier comp grids. Some companies reduce commission as they hit 70 and slowly slide it down. Ideally, you want to put your prospects, who are now clients, into those carriers that will pay full price or full commission to you, as long as you're not royally ripping them off. That's kind of my only exception to that. If I got to get the deal done and I'm getting paid less, so be it. Plan type. This is most common, maybe even more common than age. Generally speaking, level plans pay level coverage, of course, but there are carriers out there that will reduce your commission if you write a graded plan, which is partial first and second year coverage, and then even less if you write a 2-year plan. Again, you will write graded plans and you will write 2-year waiting period plans or guaranteed issue plans. And so what has to happen is that at the end of the day, you got to be very careful about making sure that you don't write too much of that, because you'll find that a lot of that money will be going elsewhere to the company and not the commission on policy fee. This is another thing. Make sure you, if at all possible, you want to be paid on your policy fee. This adds up a lot. Many policy fees pay $30 or $40. If you're making 100% commission and you write 200 policies a year, 30 times 200 is 6,000. That's 100% commission. That's a 6,000 in commission you're not getting paid because the policy fees are not honored. Again, little nickels and dimes they get you on, but very important as well. Point of sale or not. Point of sale interviews are essential for all new agents with few carrier exceptions. Again, if I can get an agent started in this business, what I want to do is get them on a point of sale carrier as soon as possible. We want to get a carrier that's going to give you a point of sale decision on the spot when you're in the home. That gives you more assurance, it gives your clients more assurance, and the odds of you getting paid are tremendously higher than if you had to send the application in and deal with underwriting. More particularly for those companies that generally are amendment happy. And if you want to know which ones of them are, I'll be happy to tell you. There's a few exceptions to that where they're simplified products, maybe 4 or 5 pages, very transparent underwriting where it doesn't do a point of sale, but it's acceptable to me. So let's keep going here. All right. Assurance of getting business approved before you go. Of course, mention that. You want to differentiate between point of sale approval and just a phone interview, then underwriting later. You want to work with carriers as a new agent that actually give you an approval on the phone. There are a lot of companies out there that will do a phone interview and then underwrite it. I always thought that that's a redundant waste of time. Why waste time on a phone call and not get the policy approved? You know, I mean, they're able now to see MID information, prescription information. They should be able to design a product, these carriers, that gives a decision immediately. So for me, I'm always skeptical and always persistent in that new agents start ideally with companies that can give you a decision instantly. Very important. As you advance in your skill and you get better with underwriting, non-point of sale carriers are fine, but there's something that I look at like an intermediate level in most circumstances, not all the time, but as a choice, non-point of sales would come later. Billing options. Now this is very important. Billing options. So the race to the ATM. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. And it's very important you understand this as an agent. You, as a final expense agent, are basically in a race to grab that client's cash before they get it. Because what will happen is if something happens to where, you know, they forget about it or we don't draft until a couple of days after they get their money, that's days in between. They can go blow their money on God knows what. Booze, smokes, whatever, and not our insurance policy. So it's important to understand you got to beat them to the ATM. The people we sell to come from a background in which most of them were cash and carry their whole life. They're also in the age where they forget about this stuff frequently, and they're usually not very good money managers at all, and that's putting it nicely. By drafting them before they get the money, many times that's all it takes to keep our policies successfully on the books. So let's look a little bit closer into how I mean. So first of all, you may want to consider Direct Express. Direct Express is the billing card that a lot of people get their money on. Very volatile business quality. I highly recommend that you stay away from it unless, I forgot to put the presentation up here, unless you can get somebody who is actually on what's called as earned. You don't want to get advanced on Direct Express. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Many of the lapse problems are caused through Direct Express business. There's a couple of factors why, which we'll cover in a minute, but you should always get a carrier that will do it on an as-earned basis. You may not get the advance on it, but you'll protect your hind quite well since you really minimize the chance for a chargeback. Social Security draft dates, very important. You want to make sure the carriers you work with allow for drafts on not just the 3rd of the month or the 1st, but 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Wednesdays. That's when people get their money. Again, hit them on the same day to get the money, lower chance that you're actually going to have a lapse policy. Now, this is very new. Well, it's actually about 2 years old, but why these carriers haven't implemented this on a large-scale basis is beyond me. It's not a very complex algorithm formula that can be installed in the billing cycles, but what this is called is Social Security Deposit Day Drafting. Let me go ahead and take this off the camera here and kind of explain to you what I mean by this. So, Deposit Day Drafting is essentially, if you think about how the calendar month turns out, the 3rd of the month may fall on any day during the week, but banks do not draft on Saturdays or Sundays. They only draft during the week for any recurring drafts like what we set our clients on. So here's what happens. What happens if the 3rd falls on a Saturday? Then, let's say, Thanksgiving, say July 4th. Well, let's say, get the idea. Let's say the holiday falls on Monday. They get their money on Friday. They don't get it Saturday. Okay, so the government says if the 3rd falls on a weekend, we'll pay you on Friday. So they get the money on the 2nd. The 3rd, 4th, 5th, we don't take their money to the 6th. And if it's a holiday weekend and a big one, they're blowing their money on something. So we've got like 3 or 4 days between there where they could not have any money and we could have lapses. And if you talk to agents who's been in the business for a while, they will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Biggest lapse problems occur when the deposit dates hit on a weekend. So what's the solution to that? It's very simple. It's called direct deposit or Social Security deposit date drafting. All it is formulaically inside the company's billing procedure software, they draft whenever the date the money actually gets, the client gets their money. So in this example, if the client is paid on Saturday, on the 3rd, they're actually paid on Friday. We don't draft them till Tuesday because of that Monday holiday. We actually get them on Thursday or Friday when they get their money. Now think about that. How much more business are you going to save because you got it that same day versus waiting a long weekend? There's only really 2 carriers I personally know of that do this correctly. One of them I love, and it's one I start off with my agents as much as possible to carriers there. And then the other one is a good company, but you got to be detailed oriented. They're the ones that started it 2 years ago, and they noticed a huge persistency increase. Everybody else doesn't do it, or they don't do it successfully. So for me, in my mind, you have to have one of these 2 companies to be successful in doing Direct Express. Any other options, you're taking a huge risk because Direct Express is just, and it's not just Direct Express, mostly Direct Express. And if we get the money for it, they do. But it's also on checking account business too. Anytime you can shorten that length between deposit and draft, you're in the advantage. You've got the upper hand. But for me, it's critical to have these companies, especially with Direct Express. And you can do the deposit date drafts with Direct Express or not. It's better to do it with both. But you get the idea. If you're going to write Direct Express, these 2 companies are the ones to get. All right, let's keep going. Last slide here before we wrap this bad boy up on this extended training session. We already did this, did that, blah, 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 blah. Captive or not? If you've watched my videos for any length of time, you should know where I'm going with this. Captive equals captivity. When you're a captive with a carrier, well, you're a captive. You can't have other options. And when you don't have other options, less product options, less pricing options versus independent agents, less equals less. Pretty simple formula here. This business is about maximizing your impact. You want to be in a situation where whatever the situation arises, you have a product that you can sell them that will help your client out and will get you results. If you don't, then you're walking away from A, not helping your clients, and B, not helping your family because you're not making money. So don't be captive if you can all help it in the final expense business. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And lastly, never let yourself be beholden to one entity. This is the beauty of being a final expense independent agent. Our carriers, to an extent, serve us. We will send them business if they do a good job of offering quality coverage, good pricing, and a collection of the details I mentioned earlier. But if one changes, one goes rogue, one decides to be different, change things up, no big deal. We've still got a dozen other ones to work with. That's the beauty of this business, is that we want to work with companies that value our business, and a large part of that is how they structure their product and service us. And if things change, independence is beauty, because ultimately we have the ability to change our business as we desire, not as the company desires. Lastly, one is the loneliest number in business for a reason. Never have one of anything. You want to have multiple options. You want to have multiple options to choose from. And as a final expense agent, one company, things change in a heartbeat. If everything in your business is wrapped up with that one relationship and things fail, you're in big trouble. And that's why you got to be very critical if you're in a situation where you're captive as an agent. So thank you very much, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this rather long explanatory type of video here. Went quite long, but the idea behind this was to really give you some inside baseball on carrier selection, especially if you're a new agent. A lot of this stuff probably isn't relevant to you, but it's still very important, and you definitely want to consider making sure that, bottom line, you consider all these factors. If you're curious as to maybe what your options are out there, if you've looked at a lot of carriers, you're thinking about entering this business, and you want to work with somebody who understands all this to help you get the best carriers along with the best training, best processes, lead programs, that's something I can help you with along with my team as well. Feel free to leave a comment if you're interested in talking to me directly, or Facebook message me. That's fine. I'm on here every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a training session every week. And I also want to go ahead and give a shout out to Maddie. Thanks for your thumbs up. Joe, how you doing up there in New Jersey? I bet it's cold up there now. It's freezing out here. It's like in the 40s. Jeff, how you doing, sir? Thanks for liking. Caesar, always good to see you, buddy. And anyways, guys, if you got any questions for me, just leave me a question down in the box here. Thank you, Caesar. And I will take those questions and many times create a whole training session out of them. If you'd like to watch the preview, or repeat of this, it'll be on Facebook, and I'm putting it on YouTube as well. Until then, thank you guys so much for listening. My name is David Duford at Final Expense Agent Mentor. Y'all take care. Thanks.